And now, coming to you from the Pensado Media Center, powered by Westlake Pro.
Fishbone, Talking Heads, Social Distortion, Jane's Addiction, and a whole bunch more. Our guest has made amazing sound contributions. The Indaba Pensado Mix Contest is absolutely booming. The Master Blaster here has a brand new ITL, and you're at the place. It's Pensado's place.
Yay. Oh, hey, everybody. Caught me off guard there. How you doing? We're all full of turkey over here. How about you?
I had ham and a little bit of turkey, but it was really I snuck down a couple days later to a soul food place way down in the hood. I mean, it's so in the hood the sun doesn't come up. And I just had a good time by myself. And yes, it was a good holiday. So you went to Vegas, right?
Yeah. To get philosophical, Thanksgiving is a great holiday because it's short enough to where when you start the holiday with unfinished work, it's not that big a deal to come back and do it later.
Right.
And that was the case, so it was great.
And you can also get away from family you don't like pretty quickly.
Well, you gotta remember, I ain't got no family.
Oh, sorry, me either. So it's another story.
My sister.
How about we get back to the show?
Yeah,
let's
quickly.
Do that. Let's save it. Hi, everybody. It's officially, as we've been talking about, the holiday season. Mm-hmm. So we hope you're full of good audio cheer. We all have lots to be thankful for, and good tidings to our partners as well. They would be Blackbird Academy, Vintage King, Avid, DTS, Lander, Fab Factory, Recording Connection, and Studio 202 DC. Holidays, the good news about this is Thanksgiving is an American holiday, so for all of our viewers around the world, we sort of left you out last week. Didn't mean to do that. Dave's talking to people about legislation that'll get Thanksgiving everywhere, but we're working on that. But the holiday season is for everybody. So as you know, it is the season of giving back. And one of our incredibly cool partners is giving back to you in a way that is just fantastic. Right. Westlake Pro wants you to be able to stretch out your budget, be able to get some gear, increase your craft, learn more skills at a really good price, and they're doing a good deed on top of it. Here's what they're doing. The first Westlake Pro holiday sale is this Saturday, December 3rd. They're discounting a bunch of stuff. They got a bunch of closeouts, a whole bunch of things. They're bringing down producers and engineers to hang out with you. It's an opportunity to get bang for your buck. Dave and I will be there from 2 to 3, but that's not all they're doing. They're doing a silent auction for David Platt. Now, you know, that's the Tennessee miracle that we adopted, who 6 months after having his spine almost severed completely is driving, and he's performing, and he's back in school. He was in your sessions class, wasn't he? Was. David also has a girlfriend out here too, but we won't talk about that. Oh,
that's why he's coming out.
We won't talk about that as incentive. That's a whole other story.
Okay, I get it now.
Absolutely. But here's something to you guys. The audio community has been absolutely amazing in helping this story out. It speaks well of you guys. It speaks well of how we operate as a tight-knit family. And he's coming in and would like to thank you for that, plus probably also see his girlfriend. But the opportunity to come on down and shake his hand, and let me just tell you, if you're in a struggle, if your life hasn't turned out the way it is, if something's going on with your family or career, talk to David Platt for about 30 seconds, and you're going to put your stuff right in perspective. You're going to get inspired, and he is just he's the most regular but special guy that we've met in a long time. So what do? You come on down. The address is 4101 Lankershim Boulevard. We'll be there from 10 to 6. Dave and I will be there from the afternoon on. We want to see you there, and come get yourself some gear. How about that stuff?
I am.
Absolutely, me too. Come get a pair of headphones or something. So to George, Joe, JD, Peter.
You got 200 pair of headphones already.
Well, I need 201. Good stuff from Westlake Pro. Now, on to the Indaba Pensado Mix Contest. That thing is absolutely booming. Enter at the URL you see right here, right below me. Show us your chops. The band is Jesus on the Main Line. They provide us with this really cool track called Always With Me, the one you had a big reaction to.
I loved it, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's going to be a good test.
They have like a collective, the way they do their band, right?
It seems like it. That's kind of what it sounded like.
Different band members depending on the situation.
Yeah, cool thing. There's a million of them, as you can see.
Yeah, absolutely. So, winners receive some really cool stuff. Hardware from Tascam, appearance on Pensado's Place, software from Isotope and Lander, memberships with Indaba, a bunch of great things, a great shot at seeing how you stack up against your peers, to have Dave, if you become a finalist, evaluate your work. And in some cases, we've seen winners of this expand their career. Like, you take the judging really seriously. You have a template, right?
I wish I had this sort of stuff when I was coming along. You know what's kind of funny, and I'm going to take credit for this? I'll share a little bit with you.
Oh, thank you.
But we've done several of these, and it seems like every year the quality goes up, and I'm pretty sure it's because they're watching the show. So I expect it to go up again this year, is my point.
It's been pretty good, that's for sure. So
you have no response to that?
No, I mean, you listen to them, but I always watch your reaction to them, and then when I finally hear them, these are professional level mixes. Like these are competitive things. And I think no matter what you do, because if you enter, you're going to try your best to beat somebody. So you're going to, it's like when you're up against the best, you tend to do your best work.
I think so too. Yeah. Good point.
Yeah, so the details are the following. Contest started November 1st and is open for submission until November 29th. By the time you're watching this show, submissions may have closed, but if not, get them in a hurry. The voting will take place then from November 29th to December 13th. So it'll give us a chance to get them in, get them to Dave, get them evaluated. Dave's got this template, he's really serious about it. And then we'll come in a couple days after Christmas and we'll announce the winners on December 27th. So you got all the details. This is your chance. Get to it, sign up, let's see you do your thing. Cool? Is that cool?
Yeah, very cool.
All right.
I can't wait. I love hearing where everybody is and how they've grown.
I like watching you judge them. Like it's kind of your school teacher thing. You get real serious.
Well, I don't know about that, but if they're going to take the time to put that much effort and hope into it, I got to give it 100%.
Absolutely. Kudos to Indaba and Converse and what we're doing. Let's meet the Happy Hungarian with the hot new hoopty. He goes by the way of
Never gets old. Never gets old.
Bill Myers with that Chongor sound thing is just a winner.
The Hungarian flag, everything.
And Chongor's reaction is just.
I got to represent
It's just hilarious. Yeah, you are.
I bet that's the only part of the show you play for your parents, right?
That's probably my voicemail by now.
Yeah, probably. So, sir, we're traveling soon. Where are we going?
We're going to Boston. I can't wait.
And what are we doing?
Going to Isotope to shoot a couple shows. It's going to be really good. You guys are going to love them. First time in Boston, so I can't wait.
Well.
And Avid.
We are shooting a show for Isotope. We're shooting some stuff for Avid. We're going to meet some of the Boston cognoscenti and hang out and be cold.
My first trip to Boston.
Is it really?
Yeah. Have you been before?
I have been before, but what I like is Isotope is based, it's either the Innovation Circle or Innovation Triangle, and it's kind of, in our view, Silicon Valley East. So there's a lot of things in terms of all the stuff that we're talking about and stuff. So I'm looking forward to getting back there. It's a really intellectual center. So that's coming up next week.
Can't wait.
Don't worry, we will have shows next week. It's going to be fun. DP, you have a aptly named ITL. Would you share that with us?
It's called Snares and Kush.
And could you explain what that means?
Watch the ITL. It's self-explanatory.
Roll it.
I got a packed, short ITL for you this time. A lot of stuff going on here, so pay attention. I've got some really cool stuff. Watch it to the end. Here we go. Clap. Now, what I'm doing is I'm mixing in some with the original clap. I'm mixing in. Here's a mix. I'm mixing in some snap. You see the snap right here with the original clap, just to give it a little bit of attack. So what we've got is this. Now I want to show you this plugin. It's a new plugin, relatively new, from Kush Audio, and I slept on this plugin for a minute. It's one knob and it's a transformer. I mean, it can't be good, right? Oh no! This thing is amazing. I parallel into it with vocals, all kinds of stuff. I like the N model. There's an A model too. Check them both out. Watch this. Man, I love that. I just love it, love it, love it. Now, let's add a little bit of reverb. Take deverb, true verb, any reverb you want. The vibe is right here in this. This was a free plugin from SoundToys. You can get it, the paid version. If you know if SoundToys makes it, it's good. Watch this. Isn't that amazing? Okay, now let's bring in a parallel. Man, if a little is good, more is better, right? It's Merca. It's Merca. That's enough to bring it to the front. Now, Dave, why are you using that original tired old Focusrite plugin? Because it's amazing, and I want to show you a little trick. What you see here is, I was on Gearslutz and I was talking to the gentleman that worked on the DBX 160 XT, which is my favorite snare compressor. And I never could get a plug-in to emulate that compressor. So I talked to the gentleman and he said, well, it's because it's program dependent. So depending on your threshold, different things happen with the attack and the release time. So I set up something close here, and then I modified it a little bit afterwards. But check these out, and I've got presets for the to emulate the DBX 160s. And it's pretty cool stuff. It actually comes pretty doggone close, you know. Now it's got transformers. The T stands for transformer, and so now we're adding the transformer. We're adding all this stuff to get a snare sound that I think is pretty sweet. Let's add a little bit of EQ. And there you have it.
If I were to list all the bands that Dave Jerden has worked on, and just, it's almost, but what's so crazy about it is all of them are important bands. You know, Jane's Addiction and Talking Heads and Fishbone, and just, you know, it's truly amazing. But I think the other thing that our audience is going to learn is that his approach and philosophy is just as interesting. We are happy to welcome to the place Mr. Dave Jerden. Dave, how are you?
Nice to be here.
Welcome, sir. Welcome, sir. Good. Old man stretch.
I just want to say I'm really stoked. Bob Margoliouth is in the audience here, and I was a second engineer for Bob back in the 70s.
No joke.
See, here we
He's
go.
always been one of my heroes.
It's a
Kudos
reunion.
to Bob.
It is absolutely a reunion.
Yeah, Bob's going to be on the show real soon.
Yeah, Bob is great. Well, my philosophy about making records is when I talk to bands, it's like I want to have something with a twist on it. Mm-hmm. You know, just either that or we get the Archies, right? Mm-hmm. You know, so bands, I think where that came from, after working with Brian Eno, who kind of introduced me to this different way of making records, kind of a guerrilla warfare type theater, you know, where you're in there, the process is more important than the finished product. Then I worked with Frank Zappa, who furthered that. And then I worked with these guys, Bill Aswell and Michael Beinhorn, who had they were called Material, and we did Herbie Hancock, and then I worked with the Rolling Stones. And then
let me stop you. You didn't just do Herbie Hancock, you did Rocket.
Yeah.
How did Rocket come about?
Well, first of all, the album that he had done previous, he had done it at my studio, and there's this guy named Tony Milan who was his production guy, who hired me at $50 an hour just to hang out during the sessions to get to know Herbie. So
That's a good gig.
Yeah, it was weird. Yeah, Tony came in and he says, I have this idea, I'm going to put you together with these two guys.
Herb has to pay people to hang out with me too. I know how that works.
And so anyway, the record company came down and listened to this record called Light Me Up that he was making that I got hired just to hang out. And the record did nothing. And he spent all this money, so he had another record he was committed to. So no money. So I set up a studio in his garage. I rented a board, an API board, I think it was an API board, and got some equipment in there, and just started slamming stuff. I was actually doing another album at the time, and I was going to his house at night and working till like midnight on this stuff. And he was doing this, he wanted to sing. And it was like, no, Herbie, you know, the last record you sang. And,
didn't quite work.
And so he was trying to sing on this one song, and we were dying laughing, and we were going, come on, rock it, Herbie, rock it. And that's where Rocket came from. And people always wonder where that title came from. And the same people that had said that the previous record, Light Me Up, if it didn't go double platinum, they were going to put up a for sale sign in front of the record company, came down and hated the record. They hated everything about it. And Rubinson, Bob would know Rubinson, his manager, he was running around saying, we still have the tapes, we can put singing on it and everything. And Bill Leswell gives the finger, says, I got a plane to catch. And we just left it the way it was. And it turned out to be the biggest selling dance single in the history of music.
I remember that.
And everything you do is iconic. I mean, that record influenced the hip hop community, it influenced sampling, it made
Well, it was a combination
sexy.
there was a video, Godly and
very
Cream,
groundbreaking.
though, did this video,
video was
and it was
incredible.
like an integral part of it.
Huge part of it.
That's a big record.
So
big
question,
record.
let's go back to your philosophy for a second, because what I see as corollaries is a lot of the artists that you worked with that now are seen as sort of revolutionary thinkers in music, they had to trust you to allow you to go be revolutionary with your process. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, well, how I gain the trust is, first of all, you build a track record. They say, well, since you worked with this, and this,
Absolutely.
you know, there's a given that you must have something going on. And especially the tough producers that I worked with. And so I held my own. And the record companies were kind of shoving towards me the more kind of difficult bands that were meeting with other people and not having any luck. And when they meet with me, I would kind of take this nonchalant approach about the whole thing and say, this is what I do. And
Either you dig it or you don't.
Either you dig it or you don't. I mean, there was like, Jane's Addiction told me a story that if I named these producers, you just go, whoa, wow. And they one wanted to fire Perry and get another singer. Another one wanted to make them sound like U2. And they told me this stuff, and I went, oh my God, you know, I mean, the whole trick. I mean, I got this from Frank Zappa because I used to pick his brains about music and stuff. And he says, the trick is just make yourself transparent and bring out the best in an artist.
Yeah.
And, you know, you have to my production technique is basically breaking them down.
And then build it from there.
And then get to a point that they're saying something different. Now, of course, it doesn't work with every band.
Absolutely.
But if you get the right chemistry, the right combination of whatever, it does click and it does work that way. Because I've known so many producers who try to impose their sound and their enormity of their backlog and everything else on this band, you know. And I always take the philosophy: this is the first band I've ever worked with. I'm not taking like the attitude like, oh, just another record. And I'm really interested in the psychological approach of trying to break them down.
So, question for you: you mentioned Frank Zappa. Who in the groups that you've worked with, who have you learned from, and what did you learn?
Oh, I've learned from Bob. I mean, Bob Margouleff taught me a work ethic. He had an incredible work ethic, and working with Brian Eno, he showed me a different way of making records. Frank Zappa had such a passion for making music. And working with the Rolling Stones, what I learned from them was no matter what they did, they were like any other band. They were just like any other band, trying to chisel it out, and trying to make something happen. And I worked with some really bad producers, and how I became a producer. Yeah, I mean, these were guys that didn't have a clue.
Right.
And, and the band would turn to me because we have to get something happening here. And I'd work with producers that didn't get it what the band was trying to do. They were trying to make them into something that they weren't.
Right.
Dave, one of the things that, and please correct me if I'm wrong, bands like Social Distortion or Jane's Addiction or Alice in Chains, one of the things that distinguished you, it felt like to me, was that you really saw something in these bands you truly loved and kind of you felt a kindred spirit with, of being on the outside looking in. And your records, your biggest records, seem to have that kind of spirit where us against them, but you found a way to amplify what you loved into what we all loved. So you take a song like Been Caught Stealing, that's a hard song to make people love, but you loved it, fell in love with it, and got us to fall in love with it through your love for it. Is that corny or true?
No. Each group that you mentioned, I can give you like one sentence what it was. Social Distortion, we had a link with Hank Williams. And it's like, let's get down to Hank Williams and take it up from there and keep it real.
That's fascinating.
Jane's Addiction. The culture was going through all this stuff with video games and cell phones are coming in at this time. And Perry, this uncolleged whatever, not an elite, seemed to be able to distill like a blender everything that was going on, and it came out in his music in a very simple way.
And him as a frontman.
And the way he worked was he carried around scraps of paper with him that he'd had for months in his pocket, and then it became part of the record. I mean, he every little thing that he did, he thought out very well, and he stuck to it. And Alice in Chains, our common denominator there was Tony Iommi. I got a demo from Alice in Chains that had 30 songs on it, and it was punk, it was pop, it was all this stuff, and there was one song that was in drop D. And I said, let's build on this. I said, Metallica sped up Tony Iommi. You brought it back down on this song.
I never thought about that.
And Jerry was hooked.
Wow. What about Talking Heads? Anything from that?
Talking Heads was an extension of an album that I was working on with David Byrne and Brian Eno called My Life in the Bushy Ghost, which was now I made this record when there's no sampling, no MIDI.
Wow.
SMPTE was just coming in.
Wow.
And everything was real loops.
Yeah.
Every sound, if you listen to that record today, those sounds will be found no place else but on that record. And they were all created, meticulously. And we worked around the clock on that record to make that thing happen, and it was a work of love. And then going into the Talking Heads record, I finished that record, and then I got a call a couple months later. Brian Eno says, "I'm down in the Bahamas working the Talking Heads. You want to come down and engineer?" Oh yeah.
Yeah, I'm on my way.
Boom, I'm there.
Sure.
And we just continued on working the same way.
Oh, cool.
Is it true that on Been Caught Stealing you were having trouble with the groove, and you got the guitar player to play in the vocal booth unplugged and let him set the rhythm, and then have the drummer come in and fill in the rhythm? Is that
what
true?
I try to do, everything I do is I try to break it down again. And on the drum part, Steve wasn't feeling it. It wasn't swinging.
That's a difficult drum part.
So I said, let's take some guitars, not acoustic guitars, but unplugged in electric guitars where you can really dig in but not make a big sound. And I had Dave play the groove. And we layered like 6 guitars down, and then Steve got it. He heard all the syncopation going on in there, and it was more than what a drum machine click could do or whatever.
Right.
Did those guitars make the record, or were they just?
Yeah, they're still there.
Oh, how cool is that?
There's crazy things that I put, like on the solo, one song, it's seagulls during the solo. Now, if you listen for it, you'll hear it, but nobody ever notices it. I do this kind, and there's another song I use the sound of an F-16 taking off, off the tarmac. It's such a visceral sound, and you layer those things in subliminally, and you get a power or a craziness.
What's the moral difference between using a jet sound and a synthesizer? Well, I got you on that one.
You take out on a tarmac a synthesizer, and then next to it fire up an F-16,
But
and that will answer your
the
question.
concept is an unperformed electronic sound.
No, there's a growl that's in that engine.
I'm just fucking with you.
Yeah,
man.
I know, but it's true. The reason I use this is you've
creates
actually
an
asked the
image.
right question.
Well, I'm surprised that you missed the actual question.
What?
The actual question is, how did you cue the seagull?
And get
You know what I do is I try.
key.
It wasn't like I sat at home and I thought, seagulls. Seagulls. We're putting seagulls. I just tried different stuff and it happened to work.
I love it.
You know?
You're welcome to Pensado.
It's like the dog barking on the beginning of Ben Costner. It barks in time. Woof, woof, woof.
Sure.
You know, it just happened to
just
happen that
happens,
way.
no question.
I couldn't plan that in a million years.
Well, and honestly, one of the things that most of the greats and almost greats who sat in this chair to our left have always said that those mistakes or those happy accidents or things you can't plan for often become the signatures in records or those subtleties in records that make it
That's
magic.
the magic. Brian Eno used to call those epi-events, episodic events.
Yep.
And Frank Zappa called those Tweezleys.
Yeah,
And he'd say, let's look for the Tweezleys in there.
that's great. Yeah, it just
I
happens.
call them just another
Yeah.
day at the office.
Yeah, well, you do Tweezleys all the time.
I mean, the more you do
it.
this, the more I realize that every session I do, I learn more from. If you think you know it all, forget it.
You're
You don't.
over. You're
I learn
over.
from every session I do, and it's a journey. It's a personal journey for myself, and trying to get my enthusiasm with the band to come together. So and I'm doing it for them.
Yeah.
I'm not doing it for myself.
Right.
I'm doing it for them
But
because
that's why it's so good. Because when you give, you get back.
that's the satisfaction.
Yeah.
It's not about the money. If it was about the money, there's much easier ways to make money.
Absolutely.
And people that think this is a wonderfully glamorous career are sadly mistaken when you're sitting there. I mean, Bob can tell you. Bob is. I saw him work 24 hours around the clock on these mixes for Johnny Holiday. It can be really, really hard work with no reward. You know how many records I had to make to get those hits?
Oh yeah, because we've all had to do it.
Yeah,
lots
and
of years and years and
the
years.
hours that went into
Oh
those
yeah.
things.
Oh yeah.
Dave, Vincent van Gogh said, never trust the time you're without difficulties. And you said that you like to make records for the wrong reasons. Is there a correlation between the two concepts?
Yeah, there's kind of there's a facetiousness that's going in there and a smart aleck
But it kind of
thing.
resonated with me, though.
But it makes sense. I mean, the thing is, I'm trying to thread a needle of my personality and what I want to get out of life in with other people's thing, because what we're talking about here is something that's very important beyond the music to a lot of people that are listening and the people that are making it. I mean, there's so much weight putting on records and the emotional value you get out of it, that we are working in a very special field, that if you're able to pull out of an artist what they're really feeling and the audience feels it and gets it, then it's an enormous amount of satisfaction for me. And however, let me just put a caveat to that. I never believe any good review I read of my records, and I die over the bad ones. So I don't read them anymore.
It's better not to.
I was
And
the
the
same
internet makes
way.
it worse.
I could play in front of 20,000 people and pick the two that didn't like me.
Yeah.
I had a knack for that.
Absolutely.
I forgot a story, and the only reason I'm bringing this up because I think it's just a great story. Did Herbie Hancock really look your name up in the phone book?
No, that was Mick Jagger.
Mick Jagger looked your name up in the phone book.
got my
The only
mother.
Jerden was your mother. Called your mother and finished the story.
Well, my mother calls up and says, there's this nice English boy I've been talking to, and he's trying to get a hold of me. He's been trying everything. And I said, yeah, Mom, and what was his name? Mick. Mick Jagger? And she said, yeah, he's in a big band, the Rolling Somethings.
Oh, that's so
And
great.
that's how you got that gig.
And when I first talked to Mick, I said, and by the way, thank you very much for being so nice to my mother. And he said, she's just like my mother. She said it was like calling home. She said, you
that
got a
is
wonderful mother.
fabulous. What a great story.
How do you plan that as a career arc?
No, it's a Tweezley.
It's a Tweezley.
It's a Tweezley.
That's absolutely right. You got it.
Absolutely. No question. So, question for you. You have seen a range of sort of musical movements attached to cultural shifts, incredible performers inside these bands, both the front player, the musicians and players. And I always find that those mark time over time.
Absolutely.
So when you take this collective sort of wisdom and knowledge and look at the state now for young folks coming in, the state of the business, what's your take on it?
Wild West. It's the Wild West.
Yeah.
Actually, where we're at right now is no different than where we were when it was making the transition from big band music into rock and roll. I mean, anything could happen, you know. And people, you know, there was the heyday, you know, when record companies were still getting out of artists the charge of making research and development for CDs and all that scamming going on, and we were making a lot of money, but those markers are. I don't see anything happening now that have those kind of markers that we have. I don't see a David Bowie. I don't see a Rolling Stones. I don't see a Beatles. And you know, I heard somebody say, and I think it's true, if the Beatles came out today, they'd be just as famous. They'd be just as popular because they wrote good songs. Just listen to those songs.
We had a, Chara and I were talking the other day about, he played me the new Chainsmokers record, and we were talking about how the notion of Chainsmokers have figured out the balance of really good songs, utilizing EDM elements inside the context of pop, so they can stay true to the idiom, but still a good song is a good song that makes you go farther.
Well, the problem I have a lot of electronic music, however you want to slice it, is it's just there's no songwriting. It's just repetition, and to them, adding another element of a loop is, you know, you all of a sudden you add some
a
rock.
different section.
Yeah, that's supposed to be the bridge or something. I don't, you know, to me, the art of songwriting, and I know there's still artists out there writing good songs,
for sure.
but it doesn't seem to be as important anymore, because what electronic music gives you is instant gratification. It's like candy, you know, and you can't get enough of the different flavors of it. And listening to a song by Bob Dylan in today's context, against something like that, it's a lot of competition, you know, for the sensory. But I do believe there's always going to be a place for well-written songs. I always believe there's going to be brilliant composers coming out, and you know, they just don't die off.
No. The marketplace finds other places to do something with it.
Dave, this is a question just for me, so you can stop the cameras. You said that reverb can darken a sound, but delays can make it hard and edgy.
Yeah.
Explain.
Well, just to say, it's like the difference between hearing something, somebody yelling hello into a 55-gallon empty drum, or somebody yelling hello into the Grand Canyon. You know, you get a definition there. You know.
So you prefer to use delays as opposed to reverbs?
Yes, but I do use reverbs. First of all, anything that I say, I can immediately turn around and say, give you examples where I go against what I just said. Right. You know, there's no.
Well, let me give you one. There's a reverb called a Lexicon 224, which was very germane to your career, so you should say nice things about that reverb.
Yes, I do. I think they're. Well,
tell them what I'm talking about.
Well, I was working at the studio called El Dorado in Hollywood, and when I got hired there, they had just bought this new board, and had a computer in it. And I had happened to get written in Engineer Producer magazine as a guy in town who knew how to run that board. And so I got hired to run that board. So when I went in there and made an assessment, well, I had a meeting with the owner, Hal Zeiger, who used to, he first managed Ray Charles. He was like, in fact, Frank Zappa hired me because I worked for Hal Zeiger. He was one of the pioneers. El Dorado and Gold Star were the two studios that were built only to do rock and roll. And it was coded by Johnny Otis and Hal Zeiger. Well, anyway, they'd gone through their heyday. They bought this new board, hired me to do it, and I went and took an assessment of their gear, and all they had was what was called a BX10 reverb, which is basically a box you kick. That's what Phil Spector used to do for Explosions, kick the BX10. And so there was digital reverb, it just came out, and I put in Mix Magazine, which was a newspaper at the time, that we had one, which we didn't. I lied. And
Truth has come out.
Brian Eno calls up and says he wants to come and look at it. So I called this guy up, Ike Manown, over at Audio Industries, who supplied equipment at the time, and I said, can you get me one? And he says, there's one going to Village. And I said, can I borrow it for 3 hours? Right. So I got there at 8 in the morning, and I learned how to use it, and then Brian Eno comes in with the cassette, and he wants to hear it. And I'm like, oh yeah, I can take you through this program and that program, mirror bag of shells, and he booked 9 weeks with me, and that was my big breakthrough.
Wow, amazing.
Because I got a write-up the next Rolling Stone that came out. Brian Eno was talking about making this record with David Byrne, and by the way, he's got this new engineer that is really fantastic, Dave Jerden. And all of a sudden my phone's lit up and never stopped.
Isn't that a wonderful thing?
Oh man,
that's a personal Tweezley.
Starting on a lie, though, folks.
So you probably should be nicer to reverbs,
Well,
in fact, you should buy that reverb.
Let's look at what a 224 is, though. It's nothing but a collection of delays.
That's true. Almost all those old reverbs were, but it still has something special.
Yeah, but the programs I used to use out of like Buck Ram and things like it were really hard, backwards things, And
do you use a lot of software today? Do you use plugins and things like that, or do you not really?
No,
Gotcha.
I still have I'm fortunate enough for me to be able to use the real stuff,
Gotcha.
which and I'm not going to get into a dissertation or an argument about which is better or not. I think they're both valid, and
you like what you like, you use what you use.
Yeah, I mean it's it's your own Zen trip. However, I used to rally against digital plugins, but I found myself to be totally chauvinistic about this thing, and I was wrong because there are some really good ones.
Jungle, you got a couple questions for our guests?
We got some really great ones. Right. This first one's from Victor Troy. If you could produce any artist from the past or present, who would it be?
Paul McCartney.
Boom. Simple.
Boom.
Get to the next
Efficient.
one. Get to the next one. That's why he's Dave Jerden.
This one's from Tony Ramos.
Pre-Wings Paul McCartney or post-Wings Paul McCartney?
Whenever.
Before he slid down a mountain of dumb fun, or before?
Yeah, okay, just clarify.
That's the reason I should produce you, Paul.
Oh, that is fantastic. Next question, John.
Do you produce the production engineering, or do you mix as you produce?
That's a really good question, actually. And because I do happen to mix everything I've ever recorded, I am planning for the mix. My production techniques, as the recording goes, is getting prepared for the mix and getting what I need.
So I read as we were doing research that sometimes you shied away from the word producer and toward the word engineer.
Well,
Or is
that's a personal thing. That goes with my dad. My dad used to say producers are barracudas. My dad played bass. He was a musician. He was a session musician. Producers are barracudas and all. See, my dad died before I became a famous producer. And he knew me as an engineer, and he was so proud of me as an engineer. But he wouldn't really, but I would imagine kind of as a laugh he'd turn in his grave if he found out I was one of those barracudas.
But you know what? In print, you've made a point to distinguish the level of engagement on a creative side of the engineer versus the producer. The engineers, tracking engineers, probably have the most creative control of any form of the art form of engineering. Way more than mixers, way more than producers. They're in the trenches every moment as a psychologist.
That's the reason I love recording basics. That's my favorite thing to do. So it's like stepping up to the crap table with $100,000. It can be anything.
Oh, no.
I thought we had another question.
No, we don't. We want you to tee up for batter's box.
I'm ready.
I'm going to ask another question. Was there a preference, bands versus solo artists? There's a lot of bands.
I prefer bands because I played in bands and I understand that dynamic.
I
really
wondered because it felt like there's a through line kind of to the kinds of things you do. They're not the same, but they're all kind of counter-revolutionary, envelope pusher type things. And it felt like the depth of your work was better suited for bands.
Yeah, I understand bands because I played in bands, and I don't pretend to do things that I don't know anything about.
Gotcha. All right, well, you're going to know a lot about this. This is batter's box. Dave is a pitcher, or used to be.
Used to be?
Well, have you warmed up? Because you got All-Star here.
Oh,
so,
yeah. No.
All right, here we go. Tee it up.
I'm a machine.
All right, fire away.
Guitar pedals.
Electroharmonics.
Stereo bus.
Quad compressor.
He's good,
I'm
Herb.
doing sound effects.
And ballads.
Important, the single.
Synthesizers.
Analog, yes. FM synthesis, maybe.
Drums.
Fun.
Vocals.
Most important thing.
Neve.
Tracking, yes.
De-essers.
I haven't used the 901 for years. Yeah, important.
Limiters.
Important.
Bass.
Important.
I played bass, most important.
Okay. I'm giving you a little setup. You can't say your computer, you can't say your dog, your wife. If your studio caught fire, what piece of gear would you rescue?
My Telefunken U73B compressor.
Well,
You know what's weird is a little company called Audified.
Yeah, I know. They just came out as a great emulation.
Great emulation, and I use it on everything. Now I'm gonna think of you every time I use it. So thanks.
The U73B is the sound of the Beatles
know.
vocals.
It's also the sound of a lot of records. People didn't realize that it was going through that before it hit the vinyl, which gave it the color of the record.
Every record that came out of Europe from 1960 to 1980 was mastered through those.
wow.
And there weren't many.
Wow.
They call it the German Fairchild 660.
I think it sounds better than a
Who
Fairchild.
were the guys that you like mastering your records? Did you have a specific set of folks?
Yeah, Bob Ludwig.
The giant.
He's amazing.
Amazing. He really understood those kinds of records.
Very musical, very simple. I've done several records with him where he took me through the whole process. And you know what his main tool is? Is actually a like 25-watt stereo from the 70s, like a Harman Kardon or something, and he uses the bass and tone controls, treble controls.
Is that right?
Yeah, because that's what people are going to be listening for. I mean, it's so simple. You know, Bonehead, I have this thing that I talk about with Bonehead, my basic philosophy about making rock and roll records, Bonehead. Okay, first record I ever bought when I was 10 years old was by Link Ray. It was called Rumble. It was just
remember that
two notes.
instrumental.
Just two notes. And Jimmy Page, for instance, check out all the songs. Dun 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 dun. I mean, every one of his songs are he's like the king of Bonehead. He's amazing.
It's funny. When we talk and give speeches and talk to students or other people, we always talk about the fact that the simplicity is where the genius is.
Absolutely.
It's easier to be complicated. It is hard to be simple and have it connect, and that is where real brilliance lies.
Well, the Bonehead I learned from Frank Zappa, actually. He's the one that introduced that philosophy to me, and everything changed for me after that. All of a sudden, I started listening to rock and roll, and even listen. Now, my favorite composer of all times is Gershwin, and if you listen to his like American in Paris or Rhapsody in Blue, they're so simple. You know, I mean, the way they could have been the rock and roll of the time or whatever, because they're really bonehead, as opposed to, well, it's like Bartok, for instance. He's an amazing composer, but very complicated.
Yeah, absolutely.
It seems like rock goes through this roller coaster ride where like in the 50s it was very simple, straight up, you know, Little Richard, Chuck Berry, and then it starts getting a little more complex, and then another group will come along, gets a little more complex, and the Ramones come along with 2.5-minute songs with no solos, and it starts getting a little more complex, and Jane's Addiction comes along. It's always flirting with trying to get more and more and more, but it keeps coming back to the simplicity.
Who said that? That it all? Oh, no, it was Eric Clapton.
I just did.
Eric Clapton said it always falls back to a beginning point again.
Yeah, I just realized that when you said that. That's amazing.
And today's lesson is Bonehead, Tweezleys,
Lie.
Epi events.
Epi events. There's your lesson for the day. Dave, it was painless, wasn't it?
I enjoyed this a lot. You guys were rock. You were very good.
You need to come back.
I would love to come
Can we
back.
get you come back? There's so much more to pick through that. The other thing too is we celebrate rock and roll hair. and you have maintained
The do?
Oh man, you got to keep the do. I remember the first time we talked about it was Van Halen's guy in year one. And
Oh, George Bauer.
He had a
Sour.
full-on, yeah, that's what it was. He had
You know,
a
Keith used to always joke. He used to pull on my hair and say, "That's a wig." All I do is do this when I get up in the morning, and that's it.
well, that works. Dave has tried that for years.
I'm moving up to that. I get up in the morning and go.
I'm not
don't-
that fashionable. You know, it's the
No,
best I
you're-
can come up
you're-
with.
listen,
My
you're doing
techniques is
good.
I avoid reflective surfaces.
That works as well too. Thank you for joining us.
Hey,
man.
guys.
What a pleasure.
It
What an
was a
absolute
pleasure.
We've been excited about this. You've been a very requested guest of ours. DP, take us home.
Hey guys, you've been with me for a while, Herb
You've
and
been
I.
schooled.
And it's rare that I get nervous. I got a little nervous when Dave said he would come on the show. He's somebody you need to take a close, hard look at because his records are exemplary. But as a person, Dave owned the world. He had everything life had to offer, and he took stock and didn't like it, so he just withdrew for a while, a few years. You don't do that. I mean, and come back strong like he did. It's everything about him is something that's inspirational to me, and I think you should check it out. Love you, Dave.
Tweasley's